The Federal Reserve printed $9 trillion of your money since 2020, and by federal law, it is literally illegal for anyone to audit where it went. Not Congress, not the GAO, no one. It's called 31 U.S.C. 714, and in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to show you the 4 things they banned auditors from ever seeing. Okay, let's just stop and actually look at this number for a second. $9 trillion. I mean, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around an amount of currency that massive just being injected right into the financial system. To really put that into perspective for you, $9 trillion is more money than the entire gross domestic product of Japan and Germany combined. We're talking about an economic force so overwhelmingly huge that it dictates the gravity of global markets. It impacts literally everything, from the cost of the groceries in your fridge to the interest rate you're paying on your mortgage. But here's the crazy part. The part they definitely don't put in their shiny press releases: by federal law, no independent watchdog is allowed to follow the trail to see where the vast majority of that money actually ended up.
Section 1. The Audit Illusion.
Now, if you ask the Federal Reserve, they'll be the very first to tell you, hey, we are audited every single year. And, well, if you strictly look at the letter of the law, that is technically true. They have private firms like Deloitte check their overarching financial statements. They also have an internal Office of Inspector General that essentially goes around counting office chairs and checking the ledgers. And look at the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, which is basically the supreme auditor of the U.S. government. In 2022 alone, the GAO did 12 separate audits of the Fed. 12. Sounds incredibly thorough, right? But wait until you see what they actually looked at. They audited the Fed's cybersecurity systems. They audited their building maintenance protocols. I kid you not, they even did a full audit on the distribution of pandemic laptops to their staff. So yeah, they're looking at completely mundane, day-to-day administrative stuff.
So here's the absolute catch. And you can see the contrast right here. On one hand, you've got the GAO meticulously tracking where the staff laptops went and making sure the building's AC is working. But on the other hand, you have the actual mechanics of our economy, the interest rate decisions, the money printing, the massive bank bailouts. Out of those 12 audits, not a single one looked at interest rates, not one looked at the trillions in money printing, not one looked at exactly which banks got bailed out. And you know why? Because auditing those core financial actions is completely 100% illegal.
Section 2. The 4 black boxes.
To understand how this is even a thing, we have to travel all the way back to 1978. That was the year Congress passed a highly specific piece of legislation that deliberately created what we can basically call 4 black boxes. These are incredibly sensitive, super powerful areas of the Federal Reserve's operations that the nonpartisan GAO can never, ever legally open. They can't examine them, and they sure can't report on them to the American public. This legal shield is explicitly written right into the U.S. Code. It's called 31 U.S.C. 714, specifically Section B. And the text directly dictates that the Comptroller General, the head of the GAO, shall not, under any circumstances, audit 4 critical financial areas. Let's break down exactly what they locked away in the vault.
So let's walk through this step by step, because the scope of this ban is just wild. First, transactions with foreign central banks. Last year, the Fed did hundreds of billions of dollars in swap lines with places like Europe and Japan, completely unaudited by the GAO. Second, deliberations and decisions on monetary policy. That means every single Federal Open Market Committee meeting, where they literally sit down and decide what your mortgage rate is going to be, is completely off limits. Third, transactions made under the direction of the FOMC. Guys, this is the big one. This covers quantitative easing, quantitative tightening, and yep, the printing of the $9 trillion itself, off limits. And fourth, just to make absolutely sure that vault is sealed shut, any discussion or communication about those 3 things, meaning auditors can't even legally read the internal emails discussing the bailouts or the money printing. It's a total blackout.
Now, if you think I'm exaggerating about how restrictive this is, just listen to the GAO's own words. In a 1994 report sent directly to Congress, the GAO essentially threw their hands up and admitted defeat. They explicitly wrote, "Access restrictions limit our ability to conduct performance audits since we cannot analyze data on actual transactions." They are telling Congress, straight up, that because they're banned from looking at the actual transaction data, they're completely blocked from doing their main job when it comes to the nation's central bank.
Section 3. The 16 trillion exception.
Fast forward with me to the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. The global economy was an absolute mess, and the public was furious, demanding answers.
In that really unusual high-pressure environment, Senator Bernie Sanders managed to push through a piece of legislation that did something totally unprecedented. It created a rare, temporary, partial audit of the Federal Reserve. Basically, they lifted the ban for just a brief moment. And what the GAO found when they finally got to peek behind the curtain wasn't just a few accounting typos. It was an absolute shock to the system. They discovered that the Federal Reserve had quietly executed over $16 trillion in secret emergency loans. Think about that. Not $16 billion, $16 trillion of capital flowing through the system, entirely in the dark.
And the list of who actually got these secret emergency loans, that raised even more eyebrows. The GAO uncovered that massive lifelines were quietly handed out to foreign banks, to Wall Street giants like Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, and incredibly, get this, even to the Central Bank of Libya. But the biggest takeaway here isn't just who got the cash. It's the fact that these massive world-altering financial moves were only uncovered because Congress temporarily paused that 1978 ban. The very second that one-time exception was over, the block box was slammed shut again and the law went right back into place.
And you know, the frustration over this total lack of visibility isn't just a left or right issue. It spans the entire political spectrum. Senator John Kennedy, coming from the exact opposite side of the aisle as Senator Sanders, later highlighted this on the Senate floor. He said, "The Federal Reserve gave away $16 trillion with zero transparency. If anyone needs an audit, it is the Fed." It just perfectly illustrates this deep, bipartisan concern over an institution wielding that much power with almost zero oversight.
Section 4. The Fed's Defense.
But to really make this explainer fair, we have to look impartially at the Federal Reserve side of the story. They aren't blind to how this looks, and they fiercely defend this level of legal secrecy. They actually have a very specific structural argument for why the GAO should never be allowed to look at their policy decisions or their transactional data. The core of the Fed's defense, which is strongly backed by think tanks like the Brookings Institution, is that allowing full audits would, in their words, destroy independence. The argument goes like this: if politicians can use the GAO to audit rate decisions, they'll use that power to bully the Fed. Imagine a scenario where Congress aggressively demands lower interest rates in October just to pump up the economy right before the November elections. They argue that protecting the money printer from political interference requires this ironclad shield of secrecy. And logically, yeah, no one wants elected politicians using the money printer as a campaign tool.
But there is a really powerful counterargument to that defense. Let's look at the agencies the GAO already audits without any issues. We successfully audit the CIA. We audit the NSA. The GAO meticulously tracks the Pentagon's massive $80 billion highly classified black budget. And they do all of this without leaking state secrets, without compromising national security, and without destroying the independence of the military. Remember, the GAO is a nonpartisan auditor, not a politician. So critics ask a very valid question. If they can audit the world's most secretive intelligence agencies without compromising them, why is the institution that can create unlimited dollars with a keystroke legally protected from that exact same standard?
Section 5. The Unaudible Money Printer.
And listen, this isn't just about what happened back in 2008 or 2020. This law is currently shielding massive economic shifts happening right now, right under our noses, as we try to navigate inflation and an uncertain economy. For example, right now, the Fed is doing something called quantitative tightening, selling off roughly $2 trillion in bonds from their balance sheet. But who exactly is buying them? Are giant asset managers like BlackRock getting a steep discount? Well, under the law, the GAO is banned from checking. And last year alone, the Fed executed $589 billion in foreign currency swaps, which is essentially sending your dollars to entities like the European Central Bank. The GAO can check if the basic accounting math adds up, sure, but they are legally barred from looking at the actual decision-making process or the specific terms of those massive deals.
So naturally, the question you were probably asking yourself right about now is, if both sides of the political aisle have serious issues with this, why on earth does 31 U.S.C. 714 still exist? Well, I can tell you it certainly isn't for a lack of trying. There's a piece of legislation called the Federal Reserve Transparency Act. Most people just call it Audit the Fed, and it's been introduced 12 separate times since 2009. It's even passed the House of Representatives twice, yet it dies in the Senate every single time. It just never quite makes it to the president's desk.
And a major reason for that roadblock? Lobbying. The Federal Reserve System spends roughly $3 million a year lobbying Congress to kill this exact bill. They deploy a massive amount of resources to ensure the Senate never brings it to a final, successful vote. They just consistently repeat their argument that an audit would politicize money and compromise their ability to stabilize the economy during a crisis.
But the deep irony here, and honestly what this whole explainer really boils down to, is that the lack of an audit actually makes the system highly political by default. Because there's no independent verification, no one can definitively prove if the Fed bailed out the right banks during the 2020 crisis. No one can legally trace the data to prove whether the bulk of that $9 trillion went to support regular Main Street families or if it just enriched Wall Street portfolios. Because the very second you ask for that data, it is legally classified as a monetary policy deliberation and totally shielded from view.
To summarize the reality of this whole situation, it is exactly like auditing a massive, high-end restaurant by having a health inspector come in to count the dining chairs, check the light bulbs in the hallway, and make sure the lobby floors are swept, but making it a literal federal crime for them to ever step foot inside the kitchen. Checking laptops is not a real audit when the most powerful financial mechanisms on Earth remain completely hidden in the dark.
And that is the ultimate takeaway here. They tell you the Fed is audited, and sure, that is true, only if you think counting office chairs is a real audit. Until Congress finally steps up and repeals those 4 lines of law in 31 U.S.C. 714, the most powerful financial institution on the planet will continue to operate inside a legal black box. It is an engine entirely fueled by the value of your dollars, yet it remains legally accountable to absolutely no one.
Which leads us to a pretty crucial question for our next explainer. While all this unseen money is moving around behind closed doors, how is it directly impacting your wallet right now? Well, next time, I'm going to show you exactly why your savings account is actually losing money every single day, even while the Fed insists inflation is down. It's an explainer you definitely won't want to miss. So make sure to subscribe, my channel like, and share your thoughts in the comments below.